Welcome to a new episode of the Electrek podcast. I am Fred Lambert, your host, and as usual, I'm joined by Seth Wintrom. How are you doing today, Seth?
I'm good.
All right, let's jump right in. But right before that, I want to say a quick thanks to AMP, who's sponsoring this episode of the Electrek podcast. AMP is the makers of energy management solution for e-mobility products. We're gonna have a little bit more to say about their service later on the show, so stay tuned for that. But let's jump right into the news today. We have a few Tesla news to discuss, and then we're going to jump into non-Tesla EV news. And then we're going to take you guys questions, comments, subjects, and go right into it. So Tesla launched a new service this week, getting into a brand new business, the wrap business. And I'm not talking about hip hop. I'm talking about the wrapping of their vehicles. So that's something that has been a rumor. But I mean, I say rumor for a while. Tesla actually did this in China a few years ago, at least briefly. I don't know if they still do it in China. But now this is in the US. You can go straight on Tesla's website, the Tesla shop website, actually. And where you can buy other accessories. Now you can buy a wrap for the Model 3, Model Y, or a clear wrap also. So you can get just the Expel style wrap that protects your paint, or you can get brand new colors from your car. Again, just Model 3 and Model Y. There's 7 colors for it. People have been complaining a bit about the color choices that Tesla has, because they said it's not like normally like when you have a wrap, what's fun about them is like you have a lot of options or different, more like fancy, more funky colors. Tesla didn't go with that as much, but there is the classic, like a matte black. So obviously this is going to be popular. The white looks just like the Tesla's white paint option. You have this grayish, pale gray color, which is, I think, looks pretty good actually.
Yeah, that's the color of my Rivian. I really like that color.
Yeah, this one is also interesting. It's like a blue, a gray with like a little tiny hint of blue in there.
Rose gold.
Rose gold. I was gonna say I don't even know what this one is, but like I can do with rose. A little bit of a green. So Tesla used to have a very nice Model S green color.
Yeah.
This one is very reminiscent of that one. I like it a lot. The red is looks like basically the Model the red that you can get in Model Y in Berlin, basically, but in a wrap. So yeah, I mean, I think these colors are pretty cool. I think I don't know why people are complaining so much about them, but I would assume the complaint might be more like we need more options, which obviously I can support that. The other thing that people are complaining about is the price. We're talking about $7,500 starting price, $8,500 for some of certain colors. So it is not a cheap option. Wraps are not cheap in general. But I mean, I've seen people quoted closer to $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 for a Model 3 or a Model Y wrap. So it completely depends on where you get it. The fact that Tesla is offering it, I think, is good. Obviously, they're going to create even more competition. Probably could eventually drive prices down, though doesn't look with this first offering with the price being higher up, but they could make a little bit more competition. And obviously, the big speculation coming out of this announcement this week, this release of this new wrapping business for Tesla, is the Cybertruck. A Cybertruck wrap is going to be even a bigger thing there, just because Tesla won't offer different paint color because of the stainless steel finish. So wrapping is going to be basically the only option to change the outside look of your vehicle. And now the fact that Tesla, just ahead of the launch of the Cybertruck, is launching this for Model 3, Model Y, points to Tesla likely making this an option also for Cybertruck, which would make a ton of sense. Is that any tempting to you, Seth? Getting
not at that
wrap?
price.
No.
We have some scratches and stuff on my car, and I was like, maybe we should just, instead of spending, whatever on, I would imagine it being probably a couple thousand at least on repainting. Maybe like 5,000 on a paint job. Obviously, this would be another option. The colors are all right. There's a lot of third-party wraps that probably cost less and more exotic colors. But I think for Tesla, it's going to make a lot of sense to do this in-house, and adding it's not like a paint shop where you have to add like all kinds of technology to get a new color. You can just add a new color and have it built.
Yeah,
So
Tesla doesn't make the wraps; they probably order them. So like, you
yeah,
can
so
order
there
the
could be
color.
a lot more options in the future, and
Yeah.
theoretically prices should come down.
Yeah, because right now I think I've seen them hire just for 2 service centers in California so far. So I would assume that this is going to take a while before it spreads to all the service centers, and Tesla hire specifically for that job or trains their staff for, because this is almost an art. Like this thing, like it's pretty hard to get very well. So yeah, I look at the comments on the article about it, and you had a lot of Tesla owners saying that they got theirs done for closer to $3,000-4,000. So I think that's definitely on the lower side, because I had mine quoted for at one point for the Model 3. It was a few years ago though, and I think I was quoted like 6,000 Canadian,
Mm.
so it's closer to like 4,500 American. So something to keep in mind. All right, moving on. We had a very interesting update on the 4680 cells. So we love to see updates on the 4680 cells from Tesla, because obviously a lot of the future vehicle programs are going to rely on that, including the existing vehicle program for the Model Y. But the Cybertruck is going to require a lot of these cells in the ramp up. So this is very important. And also we expect the next generation vehicle to rely entirely on 4680. So Tesla being able to produce them in a high volume is very important. And Tesla has always um, refused to share the production rate of the cells. Now, what they did is they shared a milestone, and taking the last 2 milestones together, we can kind of estimate some kind of production rate here. And that's why I call it a production breakthrough, because it looks like a significant production ramp was achieved recently. So Tesla announced this week the 20 million battery cell produced at Gigafactory, Texas. We learned about the 10 million cell being produced in June. So I calculated 16 weeks for Tesla to produce the last 10 million cells. So if you divide that number by 16, you get an average of 625,000 cells per week over those last 16 weeks. Obviously, I would tend to believe that more recently the number is up. Like the average was lower starting in those 16 weeks and has been going up since. I'm going to put a very conservative estimate right now at about 800,000 cells per week. Now we know that the Tesla 4680 cell, unless it has improved very recently, has an energy capacity of about 26 amp hour at 3.7 volt. So that gives you roughly 100 watt hour of capacity per cell, which would bring Tesla's about 800 megawatt hour of cell production per week at Gigafactory, Texas, which is quite significant, because that would be for Model Y, for example, would be good for about 1,200 Model Y per week. We know that Tesla is not doing that there. They are compensating with the 2170. Now I'm trying to evaluate what that would be for the Cybertruck. Obviously, we don't know the battery pack capacity of the Cybertruck, but if we put 130 kilowatt hour as an example, that's still about 600 Cybertrucks per week that they could produce with those cells from Gigafactory, Texas, which is probably a lot more than Tesla is going to be able to produce anytime this year. I wouldn't expect Tesla to hit 600 to 1,000 vehicle a week with the Cybertruck until probably end of Q1, maybe second quarter 2024, I would assume.
And you don't think that they're going to make any Cybertrucks with the old cell or the 2170s?
It would be very weird if they do, because the old design is built around like Tesla could do that with the Model Y, because they already had a non-structural battery pack design. They could just produce it with or without. With the Cybertruck, it would be strange if Tesla anticipated that and did a second whole redesign of the base of the truck for a non-structural battery pack like that. And not impossible, but it would like they would have anticipated a very tough ramp of 4680. And we've heard Tesla said in the past that they don't anticipate 4680 to be the bottleneck for Cybertruck, and I think this announcement this week basically confirms that. Like they are ready for Cybertruck with the 4680 cells. So great news there. So last week we talked about Tesla slashing prices on the Model 3, Model Y. No price changes this week, but big lease pricing changes for Model 3, Model Y, like big ones, like a big adjustment of basically between $70 and $90 off on the monthly price. The Model 3 now starts at $329 a month, and the Model Y starts at $399, $400 a month. That's with a down payment, though, of $4,500 and terms of 36 months. But still, very attractive. This is this is the cheapest way to get into a Tesla vehicle quickly. I don't think there was any other.
One of my friends bought or leased a Model Y just now, and he picked it up like a day before the news came out. So it's
so
like
you
one
didn't
of
get
those
that
things.
pricing.
No, it's horrible.
Yeah, and one other thing with the lease, obviously, is that you can take advantage of the tax credit, even if the tax advantage goes to the automaker or the dealership rather than the consumer. So you can take advantage of it if you don't have access to it for income bracket reason or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
However, this update was also sent with Tesla updating its warning that it expect to lose on some version of the Model 3 the full tax credit by December 31st. So we know that the battery requirements become more stringent at the next year, starting next year, and we don't even know how Tesla is getting the full tax credit right now with the base Model 3 with the LFP cells, and the new Model Y2 is also using LFPs. So what we can infer from that, at least, is that how Tesla is getting it right now is probably like right on the verge of the requirement, and next year's bump is going to push it over. I would assume that's what's happening.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Supercharger V4s are coming to the US. So V4 has been quite a saga because we've known about V4 for over a year now. They've been in the plans of a bunch of supercharger station in Europe. They've already been deployed in dozens of locations. There's a few locations also in Asia that have been turned online over the last few weeks. But in the US and North America, there's been no official V4 deployment until now. Not online just yet, but in construction and in advanced construction, we have now 3 sites that have been confirmed. One in Wilsonville, Oregon. We have a small V4 supercharger station that is being deployed. Again, not turned on just yet. We have another one in Spark, Nevada. In Spark, Nevada, someone on Reddit was able to get close enough to see that is actually a magic duck. So it's the first V4 that we can confirm that has a magic duck on it for both NACS and CCS. So that means that might be the very first V4 supercharger in America that's going to be used for non-Tesla EVs. There's also the payment screen that we've seen in Europe being added directly on the station. So that's interesting. And finally, we have one more station in Alabama, of all places, getting one of the first V4 supercharger in the US in Prattville, Alabama. And this is quite a big station that they are building there. Now, obviously, the big deal with the supercharger V4, especially in the US, because the US is going to get the Cybertruck first before anybody else. This is going to be very useful for the Cybertruck, because we've seen the Cybertruck charge at V3 supercharger station, and it's not a good look. Like, you have to park the Cybertruck basically perfectly. There's like no margin for error. You see the cable like stretched to the limit to get in there, just because it's on the rear wheel well, and obviously the bed is a little bit bigger, so it's harder to get there. So this cable of the V4, like for those that haven't seen it in person, like we've seen it last month when we were in Munich, and it's surprisingly much bigger than the current one. Like when you stand next to it, you're like, oh, this is very big. And the cable itself is 3 feet longer than the existing one. So those 3 feet are worth a lot. Like it makes a ton of sense. So it helps with Cybertruck, but also obviously it helps with Tesla opening up the network to non-Tesla EVs, because those are not always doesn't always have the charge port in the perfect location, the usual location, which should obviously be at the rear on the driver's side. But some of them like to get a little bit fancy with it for some reason, and now it's going to be easier for them to reach it with a supercharger network. We're going to keep an eye on the deployment, but it sounds like we've heard of like a week ago of the first one being deployed, and already 2 more. So I think it's going to come fast.
And those are being built in Buffalo, or are those somewhere else? Those in Shanghai?
I don't know if that for a fact, but I would assume that it is Buffalo, and then that might be why there was a big discrepancy between them coming to Europe and Asia and the US. Maybe they haven't like ramped up production in Buffalo just yet, while they did in Shanghai, where they have like a giant supercharger factory. One of the early Tesla Cybertruck went for $400,000 at an auction. So truck is not even on the market yet, and someone bought it for basically what, 5-6 times the price that it is actually worth.
We have no idea how many times.
Yeah, well, yeah, that we also don't know. You're right. So it was through an auction for the Peterson Museum in Los Angeles, the famous car museum, and that has a relationship with Tesla. Though it's not clear if that auction had any relationship with Tesla, because they did say that they are gonna buy the truck themselves and then give it to the owner, to the person that won the auction. So the auction, it was for their annual gala that was hosted by Jay Leno, and they had people making bid online. So you didn't have to be there, where you had to pay a $1,700 tickets to get into the gala. But it's someone that was at the gala that actually bought it, because the online auction finished before the gala, and the online auction, I think, didn't get more than $200,000 or something like that, which would have been a little bit more reasonable. But someone was willing to pay $400K for what they said was going to be a low VIN number Cybertruck. So that's why I put some doubt on the whole situation here, because if they don't have a direct relationship with Tesla, where they're like, hey, give us one of the very first one, I don't see how it happens. Maybe they think that because they have like an early reservation for it, that they can claim a low VIN for that. But we know that Tesla's reservation process doesn't exactly respect the order that the reservation were placed in the recent years. So I wouldn't bet on that much. But Tesla has a relationship with the Peterson, and they have currently a big Tesla exposition at the show. So that might be something to do with that. I don't know. All right, we got the mystery that was actually asked on the podcast last week about Wiferion, the wireless charging startup that Tesla bought. People were concerned because on their website over the last few weeks there was a mention that they were actually bought by Pulse rather than Tesla. So people were like, Tesla never bought this thing. What was this about? So now we got the clarification from the release this week, and on October 10, they actually confirmed the situation. And Tesla did buy Wiferion, but they sold it just a few months after buying it, and they did indeed sold it to Pulse. So it sounds like, based on the local information from local media, it sounds like Tesla basically did what people call an acqui-hire. So it's an acquisition hire, where they bought the company to get their engineering staff, and they didn't actually want their operations, their manufacturing operation, their client list, and all that. They weren't really interested in that. They wanted their engineers. Most likely because Tesla is apparently working on their own wireless charging solution. So they acquired a company and then sold the operations to Pulse, kept the engineers. That's the story. The bullet points, at least.
That's an interesting flip, right? Like they got all the engineers, which are probably the most important part of the company, and then they just shuttled the rest off to another.
Yeah. Well, Pulse is already a power electronic manufacturer, so maybe they just it's a good deal for them. Like, it's a cheap way to add manufacturing operation quickly, because they did have their own manufacturing in Wiferion, where they produce wireless charger, not that much for electric cars, mostly for robots too, so for industrial robots. So maybe Tesla was not really interested in that kind of business, though I would I would have assumed that Tesla maybe would have wanted a way to manufacture those new wireless chargers, but probably maybe they weren't happy with the manufacturing operation at Wafarian, or maybe they also don't need that much manufacturing capacity. I know that Wafarian was already producing like 8,000 chargers, and I don't know how popular that Tesla home, like, because it looks clear, like from this picture that was teased at the Investor Day earlier this year, that Tesla is looking to release a home wireless charging station. And quite honestly, I don't know how popular that's going to be. Like, it's going to be probably a very premium product, and it's just not that big of a task to just plug in your car. Like, I think I've been driving electric for like 6-7 years, whatever it is, and I think once I forgot to plug in my car. Like, where I got out of the car, I forgot it, and like the next day, whatever, I wanted to go, and I was like, oh shit, I didn't plug my car, and I still had enough charge anyway, so it wasn't even a big
Right.
deal. But it's pretty rare. All right, we have a few more news to discuss, and then we're going to jump into the comments section. So if you guys have any questions for us, you can put it in the comments right now. If you can put a Q or questions before it, like Mr. Turkey Neck did, like, that's good. That was going to be easier for us to get to those questions in just a few minutes. Or it can be like, we're going to have plenty of time in this show because, like I said, it was a pretty slow news week. So if you guys have any other like subject in the EV space that you want us to, you want our take on it, we can get onto that also in a few minutes. So put that in the comment section right away. Before we move on to the next news, we have a bunch of new EVs from Kia that were unveiled, and one from BMW. We're going to jump into a quick word about our sponsor of the week, AMP.
All right. Today's episode is sponsored by AMP, the makers of energy management solutions for e-mobility products. Team AMP is known for its expertise in the industry when it comes to understanding the battery and its functionality. With more than 300 years of combined expert experience, the team has developed proven battery management systems suitable for a wide range of applications, starting from 12 volts to 1,000 volts. That extends to AMP battery management systems algorithms that help companies building e-mobility products improve battery life while maximizing the power that can be safely utilized. The company also offers a highly integrated combination of charging software and hardware with AMP EMU. That includes an all-in-one DC to DC converter, onboard charger, power distribution, and charge controller for electric vehicles. This unit saves space and cost in your EVs while providing maximum power density. Brands building new electric vehicle products will want to consider the AMP EVCC, a state-of-the-art charge controller for electric vehicles with support for all major charging standards, including CCS, NACS, and CHAdeMO. And the AMP Fast Charge Junction Box enables level 3 DC fast charging, all built on the AMP charging software stack, the world's #1 charging software capable of complying with all major charging standards globally. You can learn more about AMP energy management systems at amp.tech in the show notes or on the website.
Yes, thank you, AMP, for sponsoring this week's episode of the Electrek Podcast. All right, Kia. We've discussed a lot about the EV9 in the last few weeks because they've been trickling the information about, like, we'll talk about pricing, but we only had one trim available. Now they release all the different pricing for all the different trims. So the one that starts at $55,000 is the light rear-wheel drive. Then if you want to boost the range a little bit, still keep a rear-wheel drive, you get up to $59,200. Then the next option after that, all these next options have the long range capability, but then you had the rear-wheel drive, the all-wheel drive powertrain on top of it. So the next one is the Wind at $64,000, Land at $70,000, and it goes all the way up to $74,000 for the GT lineup. So Kia and Hyundai have been very good about that. Like, they give you a lot of powertrain options across the lineup. Like, you can mismatch normally the rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, long range, short range. In this case, you stick with the long range once you go all-wheel drive, though. But other than that, you stay pretty close. You get that long range, you get a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack basically, versus I'm not sure for the short range. Okay, here the mileage here basically. So base one 223 miles, which is still pretty good for especially for the pricing at $55,000. $55,000. Then the longest range version is going to obviously be the long range with rear wheel drive, which costs which gets you to 300 miles. And then if you want the all-wheel drive, you lose some of that efficiency. But with the Win version, you still get 270. Now with the Len and GT, it goes down to 250, which is pretty wild because like that's barely more than you get for the standard range rear-wheel drive version.
Right.
So all these added features that you get from the more premium versions, they really hit the range. We don't have a list of those features, but
Yeah, it's Kia's not great at keeping their range up when they add performance stuff like the GT
yeah,
line. Uh, sorry, the EV9 GT has
yeah.
like 200 miles of range, whereas the regular EV9 is over 300 miles of range. So they're not that Kia's strong suit isn't making efficient high end or high power vehicles. They can do one or the other.
hmm And then the other news was the range, but like we already just discussed it because we put it in there. But the official EPA range were released this week, and they are as we just discussed. So the efficiency here basically varies between 89 mpg to 80 for that not that efficient one that we just discussed. So 76.1 is the kilowatt hour of the base battery pack.
It's kind of interesting though that the light long range rear wheel drive gets more MPGEs than the smaller battery one because theoretically the only difference is the bigger battery, which is
So
heavy.
it should technically lose.
Uh, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean it's a heavier battery that it's lugging around. It's surprising that it gets a better
Oh,
miles per
wait a
gallon.
second. No, the APA estimated range is actually not the same that we just discussed. Like I just saw the difference here. No, so it's 223 is actually 230 that the EPA get. 304 instead of 300 for the light range rear wheel drive, and then the big difference here,
Yeah,
huge difference, 30 and 20 miles difference for the all wheel drive versions of the car.
so they are
So
pretty efficient or relatively
yeah.
efficient,
Or at least based on the way that the EPA is calculating them, which
right?
we know is always a bit controversial because
Subjective, yeah.
the automaker has a choice of multiplier that they can apply on the number that the EPA comes to in their test, and generally Kia has been a little bit more conservative. So we are hoping that this is still the case, even though surprisingly there's significant, especially for the land all-wheel drive, you get a 30 miles difference on this. Like maybe we're gonna have to double check this just to make sure that we didn't do any typo or anything like that. But so far, I assume that's correct. Pretty wild. All right, we have the unveiling also of the Kia EV5, which all smaller cousins to the EV9, very similar design that were unveiled this week, but a little bit less exciting because not coming to North America. They
Crazy.
assume that because it's smaller, Americans won't like it, like everything bigger. But this is a sweet little compromise here between the EV6 and the EV9. You have a little bit smaller battery pack. You lose at basically 10 kilowatt hour for the short range or long range version, but you still get, well, that's a CLTC range, though it's not as accurate. But you should get still over like 200 and probably 250 miles of range out of that 64 kilowatt hour pack, and closer to 300 miles for that bigger 88 kilowatt hour battery pack, I would assume. You also have a all-wheel drive version, still works on the 800 volt system that Kia and Hyundai have been using, the EGMP, whatever the name of that platform was. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the pictures, like you won't obviously you will be very. It's going to be very reminiscent of the EV9.
Yeah, I think all these companies leaving out their smaller vehicles out of the U.S. is like incredibly stupid, but it's great for Volvo with their EX30 coming
Mm-hmm.
soon. I'm actually so you're going to Japan next week. I'm going to Barcelona to do the EX30 and then the Porsche Macan, which a bunch of other publications got to look at. I don't know, like Porsche
It's just a
PR.
prototype set. We don't need to see the prototype. We're going to see the real thing next week.
We like prototypes. We actually like prototypes
And like,
more.
how much of a prototype can it be if they are like a week from showing the real one?
Yeah, and they're driving around Marina del Rey. And why are
Yeah.
you shipping prototypes to the US? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, we
Well,
cannot complain too much because we are seeing it next week, but we were kind of bummed out that we were left out of that opportunity to see it this week.
yeah. So anyway, we're both gonna like next week's podcast is gonna be really interesting because Fred will be in Japan and I'll be in.
Well, next week I don't think
You'll
I'm in
still be
Japan
home?
for the podcast next week.
Okay.
Next week is the 20th. Yeah, no, I'm leaving on the 23rd. So yeah,
Okay.
20th. I'm still here.
All right. Well, that'll be cool. And I think back to this, I think the Volvo EX30 is just going to kill it in the US.
Yeah. I mean, it's a nice form factor. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's still a SUV, like the EV, the EV or whatever, 5. And there's another electric V crossover that was unveiled this week that we're not going to see in America
Not
this
coming.
time from BMW and the iX2 xDrive 30. So the latest iX vehicle in the lineup. Looks like a very solid entry. WLTP range, you're talking about 259 to 279 miles of range between 417 to 449 kilometers. A nice little 65 kilowatt hour battery pack that's usable capacity, 130 max charge rate. So that's a little bit on the low side. We would like something a little bit higher for a vehicle that's coming in 2024. 5.60 to 60, that's perfectly okay. 111 miles per hour, 180 kilometers an hour. Yeah, that's actually a car that I've heard a lot of people like asking for from BMW, because it makes no sense that like BMW has some nice entries right now in the EV market in North America, but it's on the bigger and much more expensive side of thing with the i5, i7 and all that stuff. It's not cheap. And this would actually be their like Model Y competitor. Maybe it's a little bit smaller than Model Y. And did they relieve the dimensions?
Kind of reminds
But
me of the Polestar 2 a little bit.
yeah,
A
but
little higher up, I think.
it's more CUV than the Polestar 2, I think. Like when I look at it,
A little
it
higher,
looks
yeah.
more crossover than like the Polestars too. Like if you squint at it, maybe it looks like a CUV, but to me, when I see it on the street, I'm like, this is a sedan. Like this is just a regular 4-door. But yeah, this thing is coming to Europe starting in 2024, and it's gonna be the new like entry level BMW basically. Electric BMW, sorry.
Too bad. Another
Yeah,
myth.
it's hard to get excited about it because I would be excited about that car. It's just you're not bringing it here.
Yeah.
So weird. All right, let's jump into the comment section.
All right, Mr. Turkey Neck is first out of the gate. Question: will Cybertruck use a 48-volt low voltage system? The latest information we have is that it will,
Yeah.
which is actually kind of revolutionary. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a big deal. Like it could be a different. Like the only downside, obviously, is that there is some accessories that maybe could work with the Cybertruck, like just standard off the shelf accessories that might not work. But obviously, I think Tesla is going to take advantage of that by itself by offering their own thing that's going to work on the 48-volt system. But also now with those electric pickup truck that are that take advantage of using power from the battery pack. You also have the outlets directly on the truck to do basically whatever you want with it. So it's not as useful as it would be on a gasoline powered truck, obviously. So it gives Tesla this opportunity to innovate with a 48-volt system. It would drastically reduce the cables weight across the vehicle, which doesn't sound like much for people. You're thinking like how much, like how big of a difference it is. Like Google some pictures of like cable link inside vehicles, especially pickup trucks. Most likely, I would say it's even a bigger difference. And we're talking about miles and miles and miles of cables that are inside of a truck, just all over the body and between those panels that you just don't see. Only if you're lucky enough. But so yeah, this could be a big difference maker in efficiency. We'll see how Tesla do it, but I'm actually pretty hyped up about this possibility. I mean, sounds like it's happening actually.
Yeah, and theoretically, if you need a 12-volt something or other, like I imagine they'll still have a 12-volt lighter adapter.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, you can
and
always do that. Yeah.
you can always do a down DC to DC converter
Mhm.
down from 48 volts to 12 volts. But I agree, it's a big deal. It's definitely the future. 48 volt is also a common voltage in solar panels. It's common voltage in e-bikes. So it's not like they just picked a random number in the middle of nowhere. It's actually a pretty, a pretty used voltage. So I'm glad to see it, and hopefully, more vehicles, Teslas and otherwise, kind of jump to that.
Mhm.
All right, he's back. Turkey Neck's back with. Do either of you have your vehicles wrapped? I do not. Do you?
Yeah, like I said, I was looking to do it on my Model 3. I did wrap the chromes. I did a chrome delete wrap basically. So
Oh
I
yeah.
did wrap that. Um, I didn't do it myself. I have a friend of mine that is more that is better with that stuff. Like I said, it is like there's an art to it that did it for me. So it was pretty cheap, obviously, because my friend helped me, and I bought a kit online that you can buy some of those kits online that are pretty cheap. You have to apply them yourself in the art, and like now my Model 3 basically looks like the new Model 3, even though it's a 2018. Not the Highland, obviously, but the ones like the last 2 years they've been doing chrome deletes on all the Model 3, Model Y, so it looks better, I think. So I like it like that. But yeah, I was looking to do a wrap. There's a lot of value. Like it is not cheap. It is expensive, but obviously you protect your paint. It's
Right.
not just an aesthetic thing. You protect your paint. So for resale value, it's really nice. Like you can, if you, especially they last normally about 4 years, something like that. So if you're someone that is looking to sell their car, like change cars every 4 years, this is a very nice solution where like as soon as you get it, you put a wrap on it of the like you buy the base color from Tesla, like the white one, obviously nowadays, though they do change at time. You put a nice wrap on it of whatever color you want the most, and then in 4 years when you want to change your car, you're ready to sell it, you remove the wrap, and then you have like a perfectly nice perfect paint job to sell it, which increase your resale value.
Yeah, and in my case, I'm like, I've got a couple scratches in my car, and I was thinking about repainting it, and then I'm like, well, by the time I repaint it, I'm almost, most of the way to a wrap. But that said, when I
Mm.
do want to sell the car, and if I do pull off
Yeah,
the wrap, those scratches will still
yeah.
exist.
You,
So
you need you need the buyer to like your wrap.
right,
Like,
but
don't
then you
take it
can,
off, please.
but then you can't get
Yeah.
exotic. You can't do the orange with the
Hmm.
fluorescent stripes. So got to figure out a solution. Oh yeah, and he had a follow-up. Can it wrap be robotically applied?
Yeah.
Not that we know of yet, but I imagine Tesla would be thinking about something like that, especially with something like the Cybertruck, which is has flat surfaces, which
Yeah,
theoretically
yeah.
would be
I could see that happening more with the Cybertruck, but anything else, like it sounds like it would be quite the endeavor to build a robot for that. Like it would be maybe the Tesla bot can do that. Like yeah, the
exactly.
level of dexterity was quite impressive with the last one, but it's still one of those jobs that you
By
need a
the end of the
human
year, I
for.
bet he'll
Yeah,
be doing that.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. All right. Martin Hughes asks, which Kia model is the Kia Niro EV killer?
Well, that EV5 probably would be the one that
in a lot of
would
markets.
replace the Nero, because I do think they're going to replace the Nero when those new like EV3, EV4, EV5 are coming, because these are the new generation that are built on the eGMP platform rather than the Nero and what is the Hyundai one, the
Kona.
Kona, yeah. So yeah, I think those are the one. But like if they're not coming to the US, maybe the Nero is gonna survive there a little bit longer. I don't know.
That'd be interesting to see. They have been updating it. I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
got a few updates. All right, Patricio Benedon asks, any idea when Giga Berlin will offer a 7-seat confirmation for the Model Y? Thanks.
Yeah. No idea. That's been one of the most asked questions that we get, like the 7-seat availability. But yeah, we have no insight into that whatsoever. Sorry.
Also, keep in mind that the third row in a Model Y is microscopic, so
Yeah,
you're not going to fit any adults back there.
yeah. But the Model X is pretty expensive in Europe.
Yeah, also true. Mr. Turkey next back, is the EX30 big enough to compete with the Model Y? I don't think it's going to necessarily compete directly with the Model Y, but I imagine there's some people who are not super precious with how big their car can be, and I think the EX30 is going to be. I mean, it's more like a competitor to the Bolt, Chevy Bolt in size, so which is going away. So I don't think it's going to compete in the same way. But the Model Y is so inexpensive for what it is. I imagine that there is going to be some overlap with buyers there.
Yeah, I mean, every new car, electric car, because we're still populating the entire auto market with it, will like sometimes punch above its weight a little bit or under its weight. That just because the options are somewhat limited. So, like, I think my parents, for example, and my parents, they want an EV so bad right now, and that they put a reservation on the Ioniq 5 and the Silverado electric. Like, you're like, oh, whichever comes first, we'll take it. Like,
Really, those two cars?
yeah. So like they don't have
They're
anything to
they're
do with
quite
it, but
different, yeah.
yeah, totally different. So, but they both would work to what they want to do. But obviously, this is we're talking about a second car for them, so it's not like as important for to the variety of it. But still, I think a lot of people are in this similar situation, but also in a situation where like, oh, the Model Y would work great, but I can do something a little bit smaller too. And if it's gonna work with my price point, I'm going to go with the EX30. So there's going to be a lot of competitiveness on that front.
I'm curious why they're not I mean, if they're considering an Ioniq 5, why aren't they considering a Tesla?
It comes down to the incentive too in Quebec. Like they want a double advantage on the incentive.
Uh-huh.
The Model Y will only get the federal one; it doesn't get the Quebec one. So they are like bummed out about that. So basically, it comes down to the Model Y is going to be like $10,000 more expensive,
Oh,
basically. So
wow. That's
it
kind of
is.
the opposite of the US
Mm-hmm,
because can't get the tax credit on Korean-built
mm-hmm.
batteries. All right, Tyler Hilliard, when do you think Tesla will release their vehicle safety report? It's now 3/4 behind. No 2023 data yet. I'm sure it's just a oversight. There's no
Yeah,
nefarious stuff going
yeah.
on behind the scenes.
The answer is probably like never, or like so one of the obviously conspiracy theory behind that is that it's because the data has gotten worse and Tesla doesn't want to release that, which is not impossible. It could be true because the data has been going like up and down at certain times, though overall the trend has been an improvement with, again, a very limited data set that was in those vehicle safety report. The only thing that it's good for is to compare it against itself. So we need data over time. So it is a bummer that Tesla stopped producing it. It might just, I don't think it's an oversight necessarily, but it might just be like, all right, like they find out like no one is reading that or whatever, which is not completely untrue because every time they released it, I did an article on it, and those articles were not very popular at all. Like people just didn't care about it. Probably because in my articles I was pretty honest about the fact that it's not great data. So I don't know. Maybe they gave up on it, or maybe it looks bad and they don't want to release it. I don't know. One
Yeah,
or the other.
maybe the only people actually reading it are the people who want to disparage Tesla.
Yeah, maybe it's just a weapon that they're giving to their enemies. I don't know. It's one of those things that I know people hate that when I keep bringing that up. It's one of those things that normally we would ask Tesla PR and like, hey, what's happening? You guys used to give us this data every quarter, and now you're not. What's happening with that? Cannot do that these days.
Yeah, and they wouldn't necessarily give us, something we could print, but they would kind of like lead us in the right direction. Like, oh,
Yeah,
stay tuned, or
yeah.
maybe over here is some good data. And it's unfortunate that doesn't exist anymore.
And while they were not always like completely truthful, like straight up lying is not good for them either. So like if I would ask them, are you guys, I could literally do that. I could, are you guys not releasing it because the data looks bad? They could answer that and be like, no, 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 no. And at least we know it's not that. And I know like some Tesla naysayers right now, like, oh, Fred, you're so dumb. Like they say it's not because it's bad, then you could just gonna believe them. Uh, yes and no. Like I said, I'm very well aware that they're not always like completely truthful, but lying about something like that is extremely risky for them because sometimes a journalist is going to ask that and they already have the
And they
data.
have the data.
Yeah. So that's something that it's a tactic that I'm not ashamed to say that I might have used in the past, and it would put them in real trouble, obviously. So
Right.
things like that can still, like, you can get information without actually getting the information, if you know what I mean.
All right. Moving on. Mike, the car geek, asks, does Tesla Semi use V4 chargers with the megawatt plug, or is it a different charger? What does Tesla call it? Megawatt? Question mark.
They call it the mega charger, and yeah, it is a different plug than the NAX connector. It's a different connector. Now, is the charger itself, because the charger is not the stall, and the V4 stall looks just like the mega charger stall, so that could be the same, but like the charger is not the stall. The charger is in the back. We call it a cabinet, basically, and that's where they stack up all those chargers on top of each other to get that high power version. And yeah, so I don't, we don't know the actual difference with that, but if your question is basically, can a Tesla Semi charge at a V4 Supercharger? Right now, the answer would be no, because they would need a different connector.
Does Tesla Semis have like both kind of chargers in case they need to do like an emergency charge at a regular supercharger?
I don't know if the production version does, but we do know that in the testing phase, Tesla had a solution to charge at regular superchargers with some kind of like octopus adapter that plugged into the mega charger connector on the truck, like, so the regular connector on the truck, and like split off in several NAX connector that Tesla could plug at a supercharger. So they have that solution, which I assume that if it's still in the production version, they have one of those octopus in all these trucks. Would make sense. But right now, those trucks are mainly used between existing like location that like they don't go. It's not like the Tesla Semi is not yet for like a trucker that just takes job, like he gets called and like take this load from there to there. It's not for that yet. It's for a trucker that works for like Pepsi and goes from one distribution center to a store or whatever, or for Tesla between its own operations. So we're not quite there yet.
All right, moving on. Brian Wilson. Jay Leno drove the Tesla Semi on his show, and the Tesla engineer said Cybertruck is 800-volt battery pack. I haven't seen reporting on this confirmation.
Well, it was already announced last year at the Tesla Semi event when they announced the production version of the Tesla, when they unveiled the production version of the Tesla Semi, they did mention that the Cybertruck would be on the same 800-volt system as the Tesla Semi for charging and all that. So it was not new information. When I like the Jay drive, it was very great informational video, but that was not brand new information.
All right, Ralph Spratt. My Model S is wrapped in tangerine dream. No one wants to hit it.
So send us a picture, Ralph. I don't know what tangerine dream means, and I
Yeah, that's
don't know
good.
why it would make people like. In general, I think people don't want to hit another car.
Right.
So I don't know why the color would have a bigger impact on that. And then
Oh,
that's my dad.
look who it is. Hey, Mr. Lambert. He
Hey,
has
Dad.
6 reservations.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, he has a lot of that. And every week when I go to have dinner at my parents, I'll always complain. It's like I don't get a lot of news about my reservation. Like I check with the dealership and they don't get back to me and everything. Yeah, there's just not a lot of allocations in our region here for electric vehicle. Unfortunately, where if
so
you're in Montreal, things like that,
what are
I'm
the
sure
other
it's a little
ones?
bit better. But yeah, what do you say?
What are the other vehicles besides
Oh,
the
and I mean,
Silverado?
if he's still on right now, he's gonna list them for you. But uh, yeah, I know the Ioniq 5 is one, the ID4, and that ID4 actually that's the only one that they did reach out to him about. Like, hey, we have one, but it was not the configuration that he wanted. They tried to upsell him. Obviously,
Of course.
they always try to do that. So he refused that one. He was like, no, I'll wait for my configuration. So the
Mustang?
ID4 was one
Mach-E?
of them. Ioniq 5, Silverado Electric. So that's three. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he had one of the Volvos.
What about a Mustang Mach-E?
I know that he did check for the Mustang Mach-E, but maybe he needs to do it again because I think the price might have gone down since last time he checked. I think he checked the price and it didn't match what he wanted. But not now that I say that, I don't think that was that long ago. But yeah, maybe the Mach-E is in there. It's just not the configuration that he wanted. There are some nice options nowadays. Like if you have 6 reservation, that's you couldn't have 6 reservation just a few years ago. You couldn't
That's
have
right.
6 reservation electric vehicles. So on that front, we're making progress. Now, obviously, if you're not an electric vehicle automaker, and you're not named Tesla, you just don't make enough of them. It's as simple. I mean, Rivian is getting pretty good in terms of the volume and everything.
Mhm.
So we have to give them that, but they're obviously still nowhere near Tesla. But there's progress, everyone. All right. Well, yeah, he had so the 3 that's missing. Oh yeah, that's right. The Equinox and the Blazer EV,
Oh,
and
of
he's
course.
even thinking about a VinFast. Like you know how desperate you are when you start thinking about a VinFast. He's aware of the problem with it, but he's so desperate about getting one. He's like, all right, like I'll put my reservation for a VinFast too. But obviously the Equinox and Blazer EV are also in the top choices, but. I mean, they just started delivering the Blazer EV in the US, so obviously the Canadian market is an afterthought. And the Equinox so the Equinox is by the end of this year in the US, right?
Yep.
All right, so maybe early next year in Canada. That's a possibility. All right, it's going to get exciting. The next few months, the next few years, the EV market always gets more exciting. That's why we love our job at Electrek, and that's why we love you guys for listening to us, for reading our content. We appreciate you. If you do like our show, please give us a like, a thumbs up. All those things, they help the show a ton. And it's free to do. It takes a second. If you're listening right now on your podcast app and you like the Electrek podcast, a top 10 podcast in the Apple charts, you can give us a 5-star review. We had a great one last week. Forget the name of the gentleman that left it, but it was a very nice review and appreciate you. If you want to take a few seconds to do that, it helps the show a ton. We appreciate every single one of you, and we're going to see you same time, same place. Maybe not